Hi there, and welcome to the Okey's crochet tutorial for making your very own adorable tortoise. I'm Haley, and I'm so excited to crochet with you today. In this video, we'll go step by step so you can follow along at your own pace. Before we begin, some of the basic crochet skills you'll need for this project are a magic ring alternative, single crochet, increase, decrease, and it's helpful to know the difference between the back loops and the front loops. If you're new to any of these, don't worry, you can find quick tutorials for them right above this video on this page, or head to our crochet basics section on the tutorial page of our website. Take your time practicing before jumping in here. There's no rush. Let's take a look at everything included in your kit to make your cute little tortoise. If you're using the Okey's kit, here's what's included. We have our couple different colors of chenille yarn. We've got a crochet hook, a yarn needle, some stitch markers, and some stuffing, as well as the safety eyes. Quick note before we get started, do not hesitate to pause or rewind anytime. You've got this. All right, let's get started. Grab your yarn and hook, and we will begin with making the shell. All right, let's get started. We're gonna start with the shell. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna make our magic ring alternative. So how you're gonna do this is you're just gonna take your yarn and we're gonna wrap it around our two fingers in our non-dominant hand. And we're gonna make an X. This is what's easiest for me, but you can do this however you want. You're gonna go underneath the first piece over here, grab the second one, pull up a loop, and then you're gonna yarn over with the working yarn again and pull up another loop. And then placing your finger on this, we're just gonna pull our little yarn tail and we're just gonna gently pull on it until it tightens. Make sure you have your finger on this just so that you don't mess up everything. And then we're gonna yarn over, pull through again to create a chain. So now we have chain 2, and so we're gonna go into the first chain on this, so the second one from your hook, and we're gonna work 8 single crochets into that chain. So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 'Sometimes it catches, so just be patient. 7, and 8. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and place a stitch marker. You don't have to use stitch markers if you don't want to. I just find it helpful, that way we know where we are. You can also just rely on counting, but that doesn't always go so well. So we're just gonna take a stitch marker and we're just gonna slide it in right there. All right. Round 2, we're gonna be doing 8 increases. So we're just doing an increase stitch in every single crochet. So to do an increase stitch, we're just gonna be doing 2 single crochets in each stitch. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through both loops. Now we're gonna go back into that same stitch and do the whole thing again. And we have our increase. Do that in every single stitch around for a total of 8 increases. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, go ahead and move that stitch marker up. Obviously, you can put the stitch markers wherever you want to. If you want to put them at the beginning of each round, like I'm doing, or you can put them on the last stitch of each round, or you can put one on each. Whatever you're doing, just make sure you keep it consistent throughout the whole project. Otherwise, your start and end points are going to be a little bit off. And just make sure that if we're doing you're doing specific stitches, make sure you're just kind of counting or keeping track, so that way we don't get too lost. Even if your stitch marker doesn't line up, you know exactly where you're at and where you need to restart. All right, round 3, we're going to be doing a single crochet and then an increase, and we're going to repeat that 3 times, or 8 times, so sorry. So we're going to start single crochet and then an increase. All right, and now repeat those 2 steps 8 times around. So you're doing 8 single crochets and 8 increases. Single, 2, increase 3, increase 4, increase 5, increase 6, increase 7, increase 8. All right. Go ahead and move the stitch marker. All right, round number 4, we're going to be doing a single crochet and then an increase and then another single crochet, and we're going to repeat that group of steps 8 times. We're going to go single crochet, increase, single, and that's the first one, so we're going to repeat that whole step 8 times. Single, increase 2, number 2, and then single, single, increase number 3, single, single, increase number 4, single, single, increase number 5, single, single, increase number 6, single, single, increase 7, single, single, increase number 8, and then one last single crochet. All right, move that stitch marker. All right, round number 5, we're going to be doing 3 single crochets and then an increase, and we're going to repeat that 8 times around. So we're just going to go 1, 2, 3, and then our increase. 1, 2, 3, increase number 2, 1, 2, 3, increase number 3, 1, 2, 3, increase number 4, 1, 2, 3, increase number 5, 1, 2, 3, increase number 6, 1, 2, 3, increase number 7, 1, 2, 3, increase number 8. All right, move that stitch marker. And now for rounds 6, 7, 8, and 9, we're going to be doing just 40 single crochets around. So for the first round, for round 6, I am going to count and make sure that I do have 40 stitches going around. That way I can make any necessary adjustments. But then after that, feel free to go at your own pace because we're just going to be going around 4 times. So round 6, 40 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. Move that stitch marker. All right. And then continue that around. So round 7, we're just doing 40 single crochets again. At this point, your piece will kind of start to curl, so just make sure that you flipped it out the right way. Round 8, 40 single crochets. Round number 9, 40 single crochets again. Alright, round number 10, we're still doing 40 single crochets around, but this time we're only doing them in the back loop of the stitch. So when you're looking at your single crochets, you'll notice that there's 2 sides to each stitch. So we're just working on the stitch that's on the inside. So you'll see kind of a stitch going around on the outside. And we're just going to still do 40 single crochets, you're just working it in that back loop only. So you'll start to notice that there's kind of a little line right here, and those are the front loops that you see on that tight little line, and then obviously these are our single crochets worked in the back loops. All right, and once you get back to the beginning, I like to just finish off with a slip stitch. That way it's just a clean ending and we don't have to worry about coming unraveled. So just insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, and you're gonna pull up a loop, but then you're gonna pull that loop all the way through. Then go ahead and cut it off and you are done with the shell. All right, let's get started on the belly of our tortoise. So we're gonna start with our magic ring alternative. So, and then remember to chain one after you finish that magic ring alternative. And then in that second chain from our hook, we're gonna work 8 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Go ahead and place that stitch marker on there. All right, round number 2, we're gonna do 8 increases. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, move that stitch marker up. Round number 3, we're gonna do a single crochet and then an increase, and we're gonna repeat that 8 times. So single, increase number 1, single, increase number 2, single, increase number 3, single, increase number 4, single, increase number 5, single, increase number 6, single, increase number 7, single, and increase number 8. All right, move that stitch marker. All right, round number 4, we're gonna do 2 single crochets and then an increase, and we're gonna repeat that 8 times. We're gonna go 1, 2, increase number 1, 1, 2, increase number 2, 1, 2, increase number 3, 1, 2, increase number 4, 1, 2, increase number 5, 1, 2, increase number 6, 1, 2, increase number 7, 1, 2, increase number 8. Move that stitch marker. All right, round 5, we're just gonna do 3 single crochets and an increase, and we're gonna repeat that 8 times. So 1, 2, 3, increase number 1, 1, 2, 3, increase number 2, 1, 2, 3, increase number 3, 1, 2, 3, increase number 4, 1, 2, 3, increase number 5, 1, 2, 3, increase number 6, 1, 2, 3, increase number 7, 1, 2, 3, increase number 8. Take that stitch marker out, and I like to go ahead and just finish it off with a slip stitch. That way it doesn't come unraveled or anything, and it's just a little bit cleaner. And then for this one, you want to leave a decent sized yarn tail because we're going to be using it to sew the belly onto the shell later on. But then go ahead, cut it off, pull that yarn tail through, and there you have the belly. All right, next we're going to work on the tortoise head. So sticking with our same bluish green color, we're gonna move on and we're gonna start with our magic ring alternative. Remember to always chain 1. All right, and then in that second chain from our hook, we're gonna do 8 single crochets. Maybe, if I can get my hook in there, sweet. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, go ahead and place the stitch marker. All right, round number 2, we're going to be doing 8 increases. Kind of seems to be a pattern throughout this whole turtle, so. Increase number 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. All right, move that stitch marker. All right, round number 3, we're going to be doing a single crochet and then an increase, and we're going to repeat that 8 times around. So single, increase number 1, single, increase number 2, single, increase number 3, single, increase number 4, single, increase number 5, single, increase 6, single, increase number 7, single, increase number 8. Move that stitch marker. All right. Now for rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7, we're just going to be single crocheting all the way around for a total of 24 single crochets. So let's get going. Start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. At this point, your piece is going to kind of start wanting to curve, so just make sure you have it flipped the right way. Move the stitch marker. Right, round number 5, 24 single crochets again. Move the stitch marker. Round number 6, same thing, 24 single crochets. Right, move the stitch marker. Round 7, last time going all the way around with single crochets. All right, move that stitch marker. Round 8, We're gonna do a single crochet and then a decrease, and we're gonna repeat that 8 times. So we're gonna do our single crochet. And then for the decrease, I'm gonna be doing an invisible decrease, but if you need to just do a regular decrease or whatever type of decrease is easiest for you, go for it. So for the invisible decrease, we're gonna take our hook and we're gonna insert it into the front loop of the next stitch. And then without doing anything, we're gonna insert our hook into the front loop of the next stitch as well. So we have 3 loops on the hook. We're gonna yarn over, pull through 2, and then yarn over, pull through 2. And that's our invisible decrease. All right, we're gonna repeat that around. So single, decrease number 2, single, decrease 3, single, decrease 4, single, decrease 5, single, decrease 6, single, decrease 7, single, decrease number 8. All right, last round, we're just gonna do decreases all the way around. So for this round, I like to just do regular decreases because sometimes the invisible ones get too hard when this is so small. But before we start it, we're gonna place our eyes and we're gonna add just a little bit of stuffing. So for our safety eyes, it kind of depends on where you want the eyes on your tortoise. If you want them more on the front, if you want them more on top. I like to kind of go somewhere in the middle, so kind of right before we start all those single crochet rows are. So between rounds 3 and 4 is usually a good place for my eyes, where I like mine for the tortoise. And I like to do mine fairly close together like that, but you can do them wherever you want. It's your tortoise. And then remember to pop those backs on them until you hear them click. All right, now that we have the eyes on, we're just gonna add a little bit of stuffing. We don't wanna overstuff the head just because it's kind of small, so just make sure we're gonna add the right amount of stuffing. And just especially with how small this is, you're gonna have to kind of start with just doing some littler pieces and just getting them in. And don't just go for it all at once. So I'm gonna stuff it just like that with a couple little pieces. I still have some extras over here for any other body parts we need. And then I'm gonna do my decreases, and then as I kind of go, I'll continue stuffing as we get a little more closure on it. So let's get going. So like I said, I'm just doing normal decreases for this one just because it gets really tight when you get to the end. But do whatever decreases you want to do. Decrease number 3. decrease number 4. And decrease number 5. Number 6. Number 7. And then decrease number 8. All right. Getting the stitch marker out is tricky just because it's such a little space that you're trying to get it out of now. All right. So now that we have a much smaller hole, just take little pieces of stuffing at a time and just kind of get it in there. You really want to make sure that you tuck it into all of the little areas, but don't overstuff him because it gets a little hard to sew on if it's super stuffed. All right. There you go. And it's totally up to you what you want to do at this point. This is where I'm going to stop mine, and we're just going to sew it on in a circle, like to the body to make it a little bit easier. If you want to, you can make it a little bit longer and sew it closed, but this is where we stop for our tortoise head. So I'm gonna finish it off with a slip stitch just to really secure all of the yarn, and then leave a decent yarn tail. All right, now we have our tortoise head. All right, we're gonna move on and we're gonna do the tail and the legs. They are both super simple, super fast. So for the tail, we're gonna start with our magic ring alternative. And then we're gonna do just 5 single crochets, this time in our second chain from the hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. And then this piece gets way too small to use a stitch marker for. And really all you're doing for rounds 2 and 3, you're just doing 5 single crochets. So I just tend to just go around until I feel like I've got a good length for the tail. So we're just gonna start just doing some single crochets. It gets kind of hard just because it is so little, so make sure as you're doing it, you're kind of forcing that flip really early, because otherwise it gets really tricky to try and flip the piece when it's so small. So try and flip it as early as you can, just to make it easier on yourself as you're going. And if you kind of focus on flipping it the whole time you do the first round, then you won't have to worry about flipping it. It'll just kind of, it'll be kind of funky, and then once you complete the first round, you'll be able to tell because it'll kind of flip itself. So just do your best with this one. It's really hard just because it's so tiny. The concept of it is really easy, but it is just really small, so just do your best. It's just a little tail, so if you need to kind of adjust, you can, but just do your very best. So, all right, and then same thing, we're just gonna finish off with a slip stitch. What I am gonna do though, before I think, is one thing I'm gonna do is first tuck in the yarn tail from the beginning. That's gonna kind of act as our stuffing for the tail and for the legs. And then what I like to do for the tail is I like to close it up with some single crochets. Makes it a little easier to sew on with it being this small. So just squeeze it, pinch it, and fold it in half. And then you're just gonna stick your hook all the way across both sides of it and single crochet it shut. You should do 2 single crochets. And then if you want to, you can go in that last one again and just do a slip stitch just to finish it off a little bit neater. But I like to do that because then you sew right here with this flat edge, and then he still gets a cute little tail, but it's not as complicated, especially with how small it is. So there's our tail all finished. Now we're gonna move on to the legs. So for the legs, similar concept to the tail, but instead of 5 single crochets, we're doing 10. So same like we've been doing the whole time, magic ring alternative. And then the 10 single crochets in that second chain from your hook. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now I have made these legs a number of times for a number of different projects, and some of my projects they end up with quite a big hole in the center like this one, and other projects they end up with the smallest hole, you can't even see it. So it is totally fine whichever one yours has. If it does have a big hole like this and it's bugging you, you can always sew it shut later. But I just keep going with building it and then go back to the hole later instead of trying to redo it a bunch of times and make it not have a hole, because it turns out different every single time. So all right, and then we're just gonna do the same thing as the tail. We're just doing 2 rounds of single crochets. So you're just doing 10 instead of 5 this time. So the legs are a little easier. You don't have to really force them to flip right off the bat. They are easier to flip later on. I still like to flip them as early as I can just to kind of help me later on, so I'm not struggling to do it later or anything, just so I can see how it looks too. I feel like I can see the stitches better from the right side of crochet. So, but whatever works for you. All right, so that first round is complete. And then again, I don't use stitch markers on the legs. They're just so small that it is hard, so I just count. But really what I'm doing is just doing single crochets all the way around until I like the length that I get. Just make sure you keep it consistent across all legs or else your tortoise will stand unevenly. So but if you want to add more and make longer legs or do whatever you want to do for your tortoise. So, and then, all right, when you're done, same thing, we're just gonna finish with a slip stitch. With the legs, we're not gonna single crochet it shut just because we want it to stand up. We don't want the legs to be like flattened. We want them to be a circle so that they stand. All right, and we're just gonna make 3 more legs. So again, magic ring alternative. Ten single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right, and then again, 2 rounds of single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, again, finish with a slip stitch. Again, make sure you tuck these little yarn tails in because that's what we're using as stuffing. All right, 2 more legs to go. All right, last leg. If you find that this hole is kind of really big and loose, try pulling on the yarn tail just a little bit. Sometimes that helps tighten it up a little. You can always redo it if you need to, but sometimes I like to just leave it and then go back and sew it shut just because I don't want to mess with it, especially if I'm that far, so. But do whatever you want to do. We're just gonna keep going for the sake of the video. Alright, remember to finish off with a slip stitch. Alright, now we have all the parts for our tortoise done. It is time to assemble. Alright, now it is time to start assembling the tortoise. So the first thing that we're going to assemble is we're going to sew these two together, the shell and the belly. This is what we're going to attach everything to, so we need to get these two attached first. So I'm just going to take all the yarn tails from the shell and tuck it in. And then we're going to attach the yarn tail from the belly to our yarn needle. If you want to do the yarn tails from the shell to sew it on, you can. I think it looks a little cleaner to do the yarn tail from the belly just because everything else is the color of the belly, so then it all just kind of blends together easier. But you can do whatever you want. So when sewing the belly on, we want to make sure that this wrong side with the yarn tail goes inward. So we want to see the pretty side. So get that yarn tail tucked in. And basically it's not going to fit on top, it's going to go inside of it basically. So we're going to start by adding just a little stuffing. We're not going to add a ton, just enough to fill it. And then we're just going to set this in there. Like that. Now, the best way I like to do it, because on the shell we have those front loops where we're going to be adding a little embellishment for the edge of the tail, we can kind of use these extra single crochets that are on top of it, and that's how we're going to be sewing it on, is with those. But we do kind of want it to sit in a little bit, not necessarily right on top. So anyways, we're just going to start, and I'm going to attach it just like this. And I like to attach it right here where this ended off, where our slip stitch is, just so that, you know, we have a decent starting point. And then get it into place where you want it. Again, we're only going to sew it up part way, and then we're going to stuff it more. So if you're still like, this is really flat, this is not what I want, just be patient. We're going to get there, don't worry. All right, so now we're just going to start going, and we're just going to sew it shut. You can either do a whip stitch, which is what I'm gonna do. It kind of looks a little more seamless, or you can go like in and out. For the whip stitch though, we're just going out there and coming out through there and just going around. So you'll be able to kind of see it on top there, but not a ton. And then just pull it tight, and then that'll kind of help it look like that. But don't worry, we're gonna be adding some little frill to the shell. So just kind of keep tucking it in, and then you're just gonna keep doing this. Once you get going, it's very easy to just keep going. It just kind of takes a second to get a rhythm started and to figure out what stitches you're going in and all that fun stuff. So and I like to kind of pinch mine a little bit like this, so it's almost like a flat surface that I'm working in, so that I can easily just go right across the top like this instead of working with like a curved surface. So if that works for you, great, just do whatever works for you, because we want this to be simple so that you have fun crocheting with us. All right, and like I said, we're gonna get about halfway done with this shell. This is probably a little less than half, but we're gonna finish, or continue stuffing it, I should say. We're gonna keep adding stuffing slowly as we go, just to make sure that we get it to the size we want it, just little by little. So add a little stuffing, sew a little more, add a little stuffing, sew a little more. So we don't want to overstuff it, but we want to make sure that we get enough stuffing in there. So that's why just little bits at a time. Alright, again, we have just a little hole left now. So take a little more stuffing. We want his shell to be pretty stuffed. We want it to look full. So just get it in there, and then we can shape it a little bit later. Alright. I think I'm going to add just a little bit more to finish off. We don't want to overstuff our tortoise, but I do want to have enough in there that we get a decent shell shape. So as we're getting to the end, just make sure you're still going in the single crochets and not these front loops, because again, we want to leave those and just keep going. All right, and then I like to do one kind of final one. Now we have it all sewn together, so what I'm going to do is just take this and just kind of, I like to just kind of pull it up a couple of times, just a little bit, just to kind of secure it in there. All right. Now that we have the shell and belly sewn together, it should look like this. So you can choose whether you want to add this frill right now. You can add it at the end, kind of up to you. You can also do it however you want to do it. I'm going to do it right now just so then that way when we sew the head on, it's on top of the frill and we're not having to figure out where to do it. So we're going to go ahead and grab our brown again. And as far as the frill goes, you can kind of do it however you want. You can do double crochets, half double crochets, really whatever you want. But what we're gonna do is just take our hook and we're just gonna insert it into one of these front loops that's still there. Take your yarn, pull up a loop, and then grab the short end, pull it through to tie it on with a knot. And then I like to just insert my hook somewhere and then pull that little yarn tail to tuck it into the shell. That way it doesn't come out. All right, now that we have that in, we're gonna go back into that same front loop, yarn over, pull up our loop. Now we're ready to begin. Again, do whatever kind of ones you want. If you want to get real fancy, we're just going to do some single crochets all the way around just to kind of give it a little something. So just single crochet, just going in those front loops that we already had on there. You're not doing anything else. You're just continuing to single crochet. Super easy, kind of hard to hold, but pretty easy. You can alternate between different types of stitches around. It just depends on what type of edging you want. All right, and then when I get all the way around, I just like to slip stitch into that first single crochet that we did for the edge. Just slip stitch into it. You don't have to leave a super long yarn tail. We're not sewing anything. And then just the same thing that we did with the original one, with the small yarn tail, just take it, and I'm just gonna pull it all the way through, like that, and cut it off. And so I said you don't really need a super long yarn tail. All right, now you have kind of this cute little edge on the shell, and that's gonna give us a nice base to attach everything to. All right, so I like to start with attaching the legs just to give it something to stand on. And I like to put the head right where that kind of started, because it's a little, like, it goes in where we slip stitched. So that's where I like to put the head. So that's where I'm gonna base the legs. So grab your yarn needle and let's start getting some legs on. So I like to do, we're gonna obviously do our legs, they're gonna be super tight in right here. You can spread them out a little closer to the edge. So take it and then you're just gonna sew it on. I like to just get the first stitch in like that, and then position the leg where I want it, and then try my best to hold it in place while I'm sewing, but sometimes it doesn't always work. So sometimes you just have to kind of do your best, and you can always unstitch it if you need to. You can always cut it off and restart, so just do your best. And one thing I like about sewing all these pieces on is that it's real easy to kind of manipulate where they are. So like I said, just do your best. Everyone is gonna have their own way of doing it, and that's what makes this great. So every single tortoise is unique. So really, I'm kind of gonna base all my legs around the center. We don't want any on the center. They're kind of gonna be in a square around it. So when I'm looking at mine, trying to decide where to put them, that's how I decide where to put mine, but do them wherever you would like. All right, last one, we're just gonna put it back in to the leg, and I like to just pull it out somewhere on the turtle's body just to kind of secure everything. Cut it off. All right, now we just gotta get all the other legs on. So same kind of thing, I'm just gonna put the first stitch in where I know I want it, and then position the leg after that, and then start stitching. The first leg is the hardest to put on because you kind of don't know, you don't have a system yet, you have no idea where you're gonna put it. After that, you kind of use the first leg, like you use all the previous legs as a reference, so it's a little bit easier to sew the other legs on, but do your best, and if you're struggling to sew them on, just do the best you can. You can always do alternate things as well. Just do whatever type of legs work for you. And I try and keep mine even with each other, so I'm going to try and keep these two even and those two even, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, so just do your best. And I do not add any stuffing to the legs. They're just so small that it's kind of hard to add some stuffing, so. All right. Same thing to finish this one off, stick it in. Pull it out somewhere else. Just 2 more legs to go. All right. Third leg is on. Last leg. And then it's just the head and the tail, and we are done. The fourth leg is definitely the easiest because you kind of have a guide of where you want it, because you want it in line with both of these legs, so it's kind of easy to place it. So. we now have all 4 legs on. Next, we're going to get the tail on because it's a little easier than the head. Tail is probably the easiest thing to sew on. All right, so go ahead and find which side you're gonna put the head on, and then on the opposite side, you're just gonna go right underneath our little edge we did. And just sew them on. It's easier because you just go in through these little single crochets that we did across the top of the tail. And you're just gonna go in a little line. It's so small that it's just nice and easy, super fast. It's only one of them, not 4 like the legs, so. All right. And again, I like to just do the same thing where I just take it. Whoop, got away from me. All right. Now for the head. The head is a little more challenging, just because of the style that we're doing. So we're gonna go ahead and attach the head to our yarn needle. And then you can kind of choose. I definitely like to kind of decide on the placement. You can kind of do it up a little higher on the shell so he gets a little, you can do a little bit lower so that it's a little just more straight on like that. So just kind of choose where you want it to be. I'm gonna do mine a little lower, so just make sure that you have it in the right spot. And then just make sure if you're doing it lower, you do it a little high, and like you do it high enough so that it's not just sitting on the ground. All right. Once you have your spot, I like to hold it on or use something to help me hold it on in place. Oops, it's caught. Go ahead and get it on. And then you're going in through these single crochets on the back. You're not going into the actual head, just into where we did all those decreases earlier. The head is a little easier to sew on than the legs, but still not as easy as the tail. So do your very best, but you've got this. As you start nearing that end again, just make sure that you have gone into every single crochet that was open on the head, because we don't want to lose any stuffing out of our turtle. And then, like I've done for the rest of the pieces, pull it out randomly. The bottom looks a little funny just because of that, but all right. Once you have all of the turtle, or the tortoises, once you have all of his adorable little parts on, you are completely finished. This is what he looks like from the top. You've got the front of him looking all cute. You've got the bottom, the back with the little tail. If you want to add anything to your shell, feel free to. And do not forget to share your creations with us on social media and tag us at Okey Crochet because I would love to see all of your guys' recreations. Thanks for watching.